Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. Even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado and Texas, in Kansas, to our brethren in Georgia, and Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, and Africa, Kenya, Pakistan, to the United Kingdom, also to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. It is our episode number 31 in the subject, the chronological order of events. And still, we dedicate this subject to our beloved brother Steve and sister Corinne, and to all the brethren who are listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. Now, let's continue to the book of Daniel. I would like to begin our reading on track number 2 on page 12. It says, "Never has this symbolical prophecy been understood by any people. Never could it have been fulfilled and not been revealed. For then would its truth have been unavailable to the people in the past, but have efficacious to us now. Necessarily, then, its fulfillment is yet future, sometime in the latter part of the Christian era." Although this reading is applied to the subject in Zechariah chapter 6, but the divine principle is that the prophecies that had been recorded will not be fulfilled unless that predicted prophecy must be unfolded first. And it must be unfolded to the people by which the prophecy is originally designed unto them. The same with the statement in 1SR Pocket Edition, page 58, saying, "But now, at the appointed time, He Himself reveals their significance to the very people for whom they were originally and especially designed." So, the uppermost question is that, unto whom does the book of Daniel was originally designed by God? And the mere fact that even in the days of Peter, according to this reading in the old symbolic code, 3 symbolic code, 8 to 10, page 8, saying, I would like to read, it says, however, history proves that the prophecies of Daniel were not all revealed at once, but slowly. The fact that we as yet do not understand the whole book proves that some parts of it are yet closed. 3 symbolic code 8 to 10 on page 8. So, B.T. Hotep made it so plain that there are still portions in the book of Daniel which was not as yet unfolded unto them, or the understanding was not yet bestowed by God into their generation. And here in Prophets and Kings, I would like to read 500 let's read the statement given by the Spirit of Prophecy. 547, it says, let's read, honored by men with the responsibilities of state and with the secrets of kingdoms, bearing universal sway, Daniel was honored by God as his ambassador and was given many revelations of the mysteries of ages to come. His wonderful prophecies, as recorded by him in chapter 7 to 12 of the book bearing his name, were not fully understood even by the prophet himself. But before his life labors closed, he was given the blessed assurance that at the end of the days, in the closing period of this world's history, he would again be permitted to stand in his lot and place. 547 on Prophets and Kings. So, we know that the promise given by God to Daniel is not pointing to Daniel himself, but God plainly told Daniel that the particular object in view of his visions is not in his lifetime. And God promised that all the messages recorded in the book of Daniel will be completely unfolded to the last generation of men, because they were the particular object in view. The people by which the book had been originally designed. Now, we know that the focal point of the book of Daniel is concerning the beast and the sanctuary. And it is even more directly addressed to the fourth beast, or directly pointed out to the fourth beast. So, the particular object in view in the book of Daniel is concerning the beast and the sanctuary. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us in 2SR page 161, saying, the head of the nondescript beast of Daniel 7 in the burning fire with the woman, as depicted in the chart, represents the same event. The beast is a prophecy, and the woman is the revelation of that prophecy. 2SR page 161. So the beast is a prophecy, and it is pointing directly to the nondescript beast. So the beast is the prophecy, and that beast in the book of Daniel was revealed in the book of Revelation through the symbolization of the woman, according to SR page 161. Now, according to track number 3 on page, let us read again this thing. Page 34, it says, the work of the exceeding great horn was therefore what he did not understand. And so it was that later in those days he was again mourning, this time 3 full weeks, whereupon he says, so concerning the vision of Daniel of the nondescript beast, it is the work of the exceeding great horn by which Daniel did not understand. It cannot be construed that the statement Daniel did not understand concerning the damaging work. I would like to read that reading in track 15, page 15. In the first 14 verses, Daniel describes all he saw while in vision. And in verse 15, he explains how grieved and troubled he became after considering the damaging work which the fourth beast did. So, the thing by which Daniel deeply considered is the damaging work done by that little horn on the nondescript beast, by which it points out to the exceeding great horn. So it cannot be construed, brothers and sisters, that Daniel did not understand how that horn made a damaging work. The only thing that Daniel could not understand is that he was so confused. Why is it that that horn power been able to destroy the sanctuary in spite of the fact that the Son of the living God, the Heavenly Father, and thousands of angels were there? So Daniel thought that the sanctuary by which thousands of angels and the Son of the living God as well as God himself were there is the sanctuary that had been trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn. And that is why Daniel could not understand it. How? In what way? Because he thought that the sanctuary where God the Father, the Son of God, and the heavenly angels which were there is the same sanctuary that had been trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn. And there is similarity between Daniel and William Miller. Now let us now study closely the vision of Daniel. Now, according to the shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, that the vision of Daniel is directly applied to the judgment among the dead. Here in track number 3, page 49, it says, "But the cleansing of the sanctuary at the end of the 2,300 days, according to Daniel 8 verse 14 and Daniel 7 verse 9 and 10, applies directly to the judgment among the dead." So, it is applied directly to the judgment among the dead. And concerning the judgment among the dead, according to White House Recruiter, page 20, it says, "As the cleansing of the sanctuary in behalf of the dead is necessarily purely a book transaction, that is the reason for its taking place only in the heavenly sanctuary." So, concerning the cleansing of the sanctuary in the vision of Daniel, that occurrence takes place on the heavenly sanctuary only, according to the shepherd's rod. Now, why is it that the judgment and concerning the exceeding great horn it was attached together as one subject. As a matter of fact, that is the second request of Daniel to Angel Gabriel. So, I would like to read again the statement in track 15, page 15 and 16. This exceedingly brief interpretation did not satisfy Daniel, and being particularly interested to know in detail the things described in verses 7 to 14. So, Daniel 7, verse 7 to 14. The truth concerning the judgment, as well as concerning the fourth beast and its little horn that had the eyes of men and a mouth speaking great things, Daniel requested further elucidation, again of necessity, mentioning the judgment. Accordingly, the angel readily explained, confining his interpretation strictly to the fourth beast symbolization and to the judgment. So, verse 23 to verse 27 is the second elucidation or the second explanation given by Angel Gabriel. And accordingly, that verses is confining strictly to the fourth beast, who's pointing to the little horn, and also the judgment. Now, I would like to read the second request of Daniel in Daniel 7, verse 19, 20, and 21. It says, Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth, that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. Now, who are they, the saints mentioned in verse 21? I'm talking about the particular object in view. Thus, the saints mentioned here is referring only to the martyrs during the Dark Ages. Are they the particular object in view? Now, then it says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possess the kingdom. So, we know verse 22 is the second mention of the first judicial session. Let's read again in track number 15. It says, page 15, the student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session, although he does make mention of the judgment twice, first in verse 10 of chapter 7 and second in verse 22. So Daniel 7, verse 22 is a part of the first judicial session. And it is the second mention. So I would like to repeat again. Daniel 7, verse 22 is a part included on the first judicial session. And it is the second mention. Because the first mention is verse 10. Now let us read verse 10. Daniel 7. It says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Now, which comes first? Verse 10 or verse 22? Pointing to the particular object in view. Or does verse 10 and verse 22 occurred the same period of time? Now, let us connect the book of Daniel to the book of Revelation. So let us connect the book of Daniel to the book of Revelation. Now, I would like to read track number 15. Track number 15 on page, yes, read. Track number 15 on page 18 and page 19. So let us read the statement. It says, although the proceedings of the first two sessions, so there are first two sessions. Remember, the only vision that was shown by God to Daniel is the first session. Daniel, the only portion that shown by God to Daniel concerning the second session is the preparations. I would like to read page 13 in track 15. It says, both seers distinctly declare that the event which they saw was the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene. Whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. The portion by which only the preparations, while the preparations were being made for the judgment to convene, that was shown by God to Daniel, is the second session. But concerning the first session, God showed it to Daniel. Although John the Revelator, he saw the entire proceedings from start to finish. Now let us read page 18 and 19 in track number 15. Although the proceedings of the first two sessions are somewhat different, they are in all other respects similar. It says, the third, however, is entirely unlike the first two. So, the third session is, there is no similarity with the first two sessions. It is unlike the first two. There is no similarity. The difference are seen in that before the half-hour silence occurs, there is at the throne a sea of glass like unto crystal, Revelation 4 verse 6, and no one stands on it. But after the half-hour silence passes away, the scene changes. The sea of glass is mingled with fire. And them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name, and stand on the sea of glass having the harps of God. Revelation 15 verse 2. In other words, at the first judicial sitting, there is no one standing on the sea of glass, and the sea itself is like unto crystal, while at the second sitting, the sea appears like unto a fiery stream, and the saints stand on it. Now, the reading is very clear that the sea appears like unto a fiery stream. That is at the second sitting. At the first sitting, the sea itself is like unto crystal, not fiery stream. So the description, fiery stream, that is already the second sitting in its perfect fulfillment according to this reading in track 15, verse 17 and verse 18. Pages 17 and page 18. Now, I would like to read, brothers and sisters, Daniel 7, verse 10 and 11. It says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. So verse 10 is a description of the second sitting, as explained by the Sharper's Rod in track 15, page 18. Because on the first sitting, the sea of glass is like unto crystal, not fiery stream. But when the sea of glass changes from clear as crystal, it became a fiery stream. That is at the second setting, and that is after the half-hour silence. According to reading in track 15, pages 17 and page 18. Now let us go back again to verse 21 and verse 22. It says, Daniel 7, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. The statement, the same horn, can be easily understood that, brothers and sisters, indicates second occurrence. as far as grammatical rule is thus concerned. It says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Then it says, until the Ancient of Days came. So, we know that the word until meaning up to. Up to the time when the Ancient of Days came. So, verse 21, indicating clearly that this horn made war with the saints and been able to prevail against them only up to the time when the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possess the kingdom. So, these verses, verse 20, verse 21, and verse 22 is the explanation of Daniel after the brief explanation given by Angel Gabriel. So, we need to study closely verse 21 and verse 22. That is the understanding of Daniel after the first explanation, which is very brief explanation given by Angel Gabriel. I would like to read again the statement in track number 15. Track number 15. It says here, page 17. Clearly then, Daniel saw only one judicial sitting. So Daniel's vision is only one judicial sitting. But God gave also a vision to Daniel, the second judicial sitting, but only while the preparations were being made. According to track 15, page 13. And we know that it is on the second judicial sitting by which the sea of glass appears like unto a fiery stream. Page 19 in track 15. So, in the second judicial sitting, the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is that the sea of glass became a fiery stream. But Daniel did not see or have not been able to see the events when there are already saints standing on the sea of glass mingled with fire, or the sea of glass which becomes a fiery stream. That portion was not shown by God to Daniel, but only to John the Beloved. And the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel concerning the second sitting is that the sea of glass became a fiery stream, as stated in Daniel 7, verse 10. Brothers and sisters, But remember, Daniel 7 verse 10 is the second mention of Daniel concerning the first judicial session. Because there are two judicial sessions. But only one judicial session that was shown by God to Daniel, according to track 15, page 15. It says, the student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. Although he does make mention of the judgment twice, first in verse 10 of chapter 7 and second in verse 22. Now, let us study closely, brothers and sisters, concerning verse 10 first. Remember, verse 10 is a part of the first judicial session. What is the first judicial session? Judgment that pertains to the dead. So I would like to repeat again, brothers and sisters. The only vision that was shown by God to Daniel is the judgment that pertains to the dead. Concerning the second judicial session, the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is while the preparations were being made to the place by which the judgment was to convene. Track 15, page 13. But from the time when the second judicial session already in progress, Daniel has no more information concerning about it. And it was only shown by God to John the Revelator. Now, the description in Daniel 7 verse 10, it says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Now the question is, does Daniel 7 verse 10 is applied to October 22, 1844? We know that there are plenty of passages, in abundance, that Daniel 7 verse 10 was applied to October 22, 1844. Now, if we will apply in October 22, 1844, Daniel 7 verse 10. Now, when does that period of time by which the sea of glass is not a fiery stream? It is only clear as crystal. Because the statement in track 15, page 19, let us read again. It says, in other words, at the first judicial sitting, there is no one standing on the sea of glass. So, on the first judicial sitting, there is no one standing on the sea of glass, not even one. And the sea itself is like unto crystal. It says, and the sea itself is like unto crystal, while at the second sitting, the sea appears like unto a fiery stream, and the saints stand on it. So, the same with the statement in page 18, it says, I would like to read again. The differences are seen in that before the half-hour silence occurs, there is at the throne a sea of glass like unto crystal. So that is before the half-hour silence. Before the half-hour silence, the sea of glass is only like unto crystal. Revelation 4 verse 6. And no one stands on it. And no one stands on it. But after the half-hour silence passes away, the scene changes. So the word changes, brothers and sisters, from sea of glass unto fiery stream. It says the sea of glass is mingled with fire. So, in the language of Daniel, it is called fiery stream. The sea of glass mingled with fire. You can read this in track 15, page 12 in the comparison. It says, track 15, page 12, that John's vision is a forecast of the same event as that revealed to Daniel, chapter 7, is quickly seen from the following brief comparison. And then that is number 3. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him, verse 10. And then in John's vision, and I saw as it were sea of glass mingled with fire. So Revelation 15 verse 2 is the revelation of Daniel 7 verse 10. And Revelation 15 verse 2 is already the second judicial sitting. So, verse 10, brothers and sisters, is a part of the second judicial sitting. So, the direct application of verse 10 is in the second judicial sitting, not on the first judicial sitting, because on the first judicial sitting, the description is only the sea of glass is like unto crystal and not a fiery stream or not mingled with fire. Now let us go back again to verse 21 and verse 22. It says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came. And judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So verse 22 is a very broad subject, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to read to you the old codes. A 6 symbolic code. One to 6 on page 13. A 6 symbolic code. 1 to 6, page 13. It says, Let's see. The reception of his kingdom takes place in heaven, while the saints are on earth. This fact was made known to us first by Daniel when he wrote, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages shall serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Daniel 7 verse 13 and 14. And second, by Jesus, when he said of himself, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. Luke 19 verse 12. 6 symbolic code 1 to 6, page 13. So, in that reading, in 6 symbolic code number 1 to 6, page 13, the voice of inspiration is plainly telling us, brothers and sisters, that the perfect fulfillment of verse 13 and 14 is found in the parable of Jesus Christ in Luke 19 verse 12. Luke 19 verse 12. Now let us read the statement in track number 6 on page 56. Page 55 and page 56. He says, the scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom after the thrones are cast down and after the judgment is completed before his second coming. That this is so is further evidence by the parable of Luke 19 verse 15, which states that Christ receives the kingdom, and that afterwards he comes to slay his enemies. Now, let us ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. It says, the scriptures make clear that while Jesus Christ is still in the sanctuary, that is the time that Jesus Christ receives the kingdom. When? After the thrones are cast down. And when does the thrones cast down? After the investigative judgment is completed. And that is before his second coming. Now, what second coming mentioned here? Is it the second visible coming of Jesus Christ? And since it is connected with Luke 19:15 or Luke 19:12 to verse 15, it cannot be applied to the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. But rather, it is pointing to the second invisible coming of Jesus Christ, because it is connected to the book of Daniel. Now, let us read, brothers and sisters, in 1 SR. 1 SR page 213. So 1 SR page 213. and also 211. So let us read. It says, these 10 kings, 1 SR 213, these 10 kings personate the civilization in the 5th period, or the one which followed Rome to our own time, and on to the second coming of Christ, to the second coming of Christ according to Daniel 2:42, Daniel 2 verse 44 rather. So Daniel 2 verse 44 is the second coming of Christ, but not the visible coming. That is the second invisible coming of Jesus Christ, by which at that time, in the days of these kings, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. It is Jesus Christ who will set up that kingdom. And that kingdom will be set up by Jesus Christ at the second invisible coming of Jesus Christ. Brothers and sisters. Now here another statement in 211. In 1 SR it says, after revealing to the king the end of his golden empire, represented by the head of gold and down through the stream of time, to the second coming of Christ, Daniel says, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. But in Daniel chapter 2, that is pointing to the stone kingdom. That is the time by which Jesus Christ will cut out the stone of the mountain. Cut out without hands. Now, let us read 2 SR. 161 and 162. It says, 2 SR 161 and 162. The great stone of Daniel 2 that smote the image on the feet is a symbol of the coming of Christ. And the breaking of the image denotes the breaking of the nations. So I would like to read again 2 SR 161 and 162. The great stone of Daniel 2 that smote the image on the feet is a symbol of the coming of Christ. But that is the second invisible coming of Jesus Christ. Because on the first invisible coming of Jesus Christ, we explained several times, that is the time that He came just to give message to Ezekiel. And of course, that is pointing to the entire plan of redemption. And then Jesus Christ will come at the second invisible coming to set up the kingdom. What kingdom? The stone kingdom. The subjects of the kingdom. It is Jesus Christ who will gather them. According to Revelation 14, as stated in 2 TG 44, page 37. It is the Son of Man that will gather the 144,000 living saints. Now, I would like to read again the statement in answer number 2. So, it says here on page 86, page 88 rather, page 88. Still, look at the verses, Daniel 7 verse 13 and 14. So, let us read the statement here in answerer number 2, page 88. Bringing into prophetic focus the same event. So, verse 13 and 14 is the same event. So, let us read. Bringing into prophetic focus the same event, Jesus declared parabolically, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and to return. Luke 19 verse 12. Note that he receives the kingdom, acquires ownership of it while he is away, not when he returns. So, Jesus Christ acquires ownership of it. Or in other words, while Jesus Christ was still in the heavenly sanctuary, there is already a church. Jesus Christ recognized them as His. Jesus Christ claimed them as His own. He acquires ownership of that church while Jesus Christ was still in the heavenly sanctuary. According to this reading in Answerer number 2, page 88. Now let us go back again, brothers and sisters. On track number 6, page 56. So let us read again. It says 55 and page 56, and enumerate one by one the important points. The scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, so while Jesus Christ is in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom. What does it mean? According to Answerer number 2, page 88, He acquires ownership of it. And it really points out, brethren, to the statement in Answerer number 2 on page, it says here, I would like to read that reading. Answerer number 2, page 55. It says, thus did the work of the gospel begin to grow rapidly once the Lord got a group of people that He could trust and use. Answerer number 2, page 55. Thus did the work of the gospel begin to grow rapidly once the Lord got a group of people that He could trust and use. Of course, that trust is sacred trust. That is pointing to the heavenly truth entrusted to that people. So, the statement is very plain that once God got a group of people that He could trust and use, then the work of the gospel will grow rapidly, in rapid succession, brothers and sisters. And that is the church by which Jesus Christ acquires ownership of them. So that is one of the most important point, brothers and sisters, that Jesus Christ Himself acquires ownership of them. Now, let's go back to the reading in track number 6, page 55 and 56. The scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom after the thrones are cast down and after the investigative judgment is completed before His second coming. That this is so is further evidence by the parable of Luke 19 verse 15, which states that Christ receives the kingdom and that afterwards he comes to slay his enemies. Now, ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. The quotation is Daniel 7, verse 13 and 14. So, if we will be studying the book of Daniel, the focal point is not the time when the cleansing is in progress, but rather to the time when the cleansing is finished. Because that is the inquiry of Daniel. Now, in verse 13 and 14, it says, Daniel 8, then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now, the shepherd's rod declared clearly in 2TG. It says here in 2TG number 42, pages 32 and 33, it says, the daily, the desolation, also the sanctuary and the host pertain both to the doctrines and the people. Both are to be cleansed. And the angel explained that the cleansing of the sanctuary, cleansing it from both error and hypocrisy, takes place after the 2,300 days during the time of the end. So, it says, when does the cleansing takes place? After the 2,300 days. So, not during the 2,300 days, but it is after the 2,300 days. And it says, during the time of the end. Now, since we are talking about the book of Daniel, brothers and sisters, it must be pertaining to the first judicial session. It must be pertaining to the first judicial sitting, but not during the time when the first judicial sitting is in progress, and not during the time when the first judicial session is in progress, but rather at the time when it is finished. And the mere fact that God gave the vision to Daniel that the sea of glass, which is like unto crystal, become fiery stream, indicates that the first judicial sitting is finished, the first judicial session is finished, and then the preparation for the second judicial sitting and the second judicial session is being made up. Now, let us read again the statement in track 15. Track 15, page 13. It says, both seers, page 13. Track number 15, page 13. Both seers distinctly declare that the events which they saw was the judgment. So Daniel and John the Beloved, the event that was shown to them is the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene. This statement is pointing to the second judicial sitting, pointing to the second judicial session. Brothers and sisters, by which the preparation when the preparation were being made, God showed to Daniel. In what verse? Verse 10. Because fiery stream is the second judicial sitting. Now let us go back again to the reading in track 15, pages 18 and 19. It says, the differences are seen in that before the half-hour silence occurs, there is at the throne a sea of glass like unto crystal. Revelation 4 verse 6. So that is the sea of glass, like unto crystal before the half-hour silence. And no one stands on it. So it is like unto crystal, but no one stands on it. But after the half-hour silence passes away, the scene changes. So there is changes. And it is pointing to the great change. The scene changes. The sea of glass is mingled with fire. And them that had gotten the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. Revelation 15:2. In other words, at the first judicial sitting, there is no one standing on the sea of glass, and the sea itself is like unto crystal, while at the second sitting, the sea appears like unto a fiery stream, and the saint stands on it. Track 15, page 18 and 19. Therefore, verse 10, Daniel 7 verse 10, is not pointing to the commencement of the judicial proceedings of the judgment that pertains to the dead, but rather to the time when the judgment that pertains to the dead is finished, because it is a fiery stream, and a fiery stream is the preparations were already being made to the second judicial sitting, because the first judicial sitting is already finished. Now, I would like to go back again to 2TG. 2TG number 42, page 32 and 33. Let us read again. It says, the daily, the desolation, also the sanctuary, and the host pertain both to the doctrines and the people. Both are to be cleansed. So, the cleansing is include the doctrines. It says, both are to be cleansed. Now, let us connect to let us connect in 1SR 126. It says 1SR 126. It says 7 perfect number. I would like to read the middle part. The question is 1SR 126. The question is, why was not the seventh portion included in this prophecy? Because the six were polluted, defiled with man's preparation. Man's thoughts and plans had been injected and followed, which in God's sight are as dung. It is not to be so with the seventh, for it is the last. It must be pure. It must be pure. So the only predicted step by which they have the unadulterated truth, pure and undefiled, is the seventh step. If you will go to 127 in 1SR, it says, it could be explained that this brings us to the opening of the seventh seal of Revelation 8 verse 1. It says, it could be explained that this brings us to the opening of the seventh seal of Revelation 8:1. The church on the seventh step, the church under the seventh seal, and in the seventh trumpet. So it points out to the church on the seventh step, the church on the seventh seal, and the church in the seventh trumpet. Now, I would like to connect to Isaiah chapter 6. Let's read again. In 4 BC, 11:3:8 and 11:3:9. It says, Isaiah chapter 6, Revelation 11:19. What is Revelation 11:19? Seventh trumpet. Then it says, Isaiah's experience represents last day church. Undoubtedly, the church mentioned here must be the church in the seventh trumpet, the one mentioned in 1 SR 127, because Revelation 11 verse 19 is the seventh trumpet. Now, let us read again the statement in 4 BC 11:3-9. It says, the vision given to Isaiah represents the condition of God's people in the last days. They are privileged to see by faith the work that is going forward in the heavenly sanctuary. For BC 11:3:8 and 11:3:9. So that is the church under the seventh seal. That is the church under the seventh step. That is the church under the seventh trumpet. And according to 1 SR, let us go back to 1 SR 126 concerning the seventh step. It says here, let us read. 1 SR 126, it says, it is not to be so with the seventh, for it is the last. It must be pure. So, without any doubts, the vision that was shown by God to Ezekiel and the vision that was shown by God to Daniel must be in perfect harmony. Daniel 7 verse 10, to repeat again, is not the commencement of the judgment. Although it is applied to the commencement, but that is not the particular object in view. And also the people living in that period of time is not the particular object in view. And that is the reason why the entire book of Daniel was not completely unfolded in their lifetime. Because verse 10 is already a preparation of the second judicial sitting according to track number 15, brothers and sisters, as explained by the Shepherd's Rod, pages 18 and page 19. It says that at the second judicial sitting, the scene changes. The sea of glass, which is like unto a crystal, became a fiery stream. And there are already saints standing on it. So, the difference between the first judicial sitting is that the sea of glass is like unto crystal, and there are no saints standing on it. But in the second judicial sitting, the scene changes. The sea of glass like unto crystal become fiery stream, or in the language of John, mingled with fire, and there are saints standing on it. But that event, when there are saints standing on it, that is the time when the judgment is already in progress. And that vision that was not shown by God to Daniel according to track number 15, page 13, because the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is that while the second judicial sitting, the preparations were being made, and how it was illustrated in the book of Daniel by telling that it is already a fiery stream. So, the statement in Daniel 7 verse 10 is an indication that the investigative judgment is completed. So, that is the statement in track number 6. Let us go back again to track number 6, page 55. It says, the scriptures make clear that while in the sanctuary, Christ receives the kingdom. After the thrones are cast down, present tense. It did not say, after the thrones were cast down, but rather inscribed in present occurrence. Christ receives the kingdom after the thrones are cast down. What thrones that are cast down? Meaning, when the thrones are being set up. While the thrones are set up. For what? For the second judicial sitting. Because it says, and after the investigative judgment is completed. What investigative judgment is completed? It is the investigative judgment of the first judicial sitting. And it says, before His second coming. And we already showed to you in 7 symbolic code, 6 to 13, brothers and sisters, or 7 symbolic code, 1 to 6, page 13, that Daniel 7, 13, and 14 is the same with the parable of Jesus Christ in Luke 19, verse 12 to 15, also in answerer number 2, page 87 and 88, quoting Daniel 7, verse 13 and 14, connected to Luke 19, verse 12 to verse 15. Now, let us ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. I would like to go back again to the statement in 1 SR 126. It says, let us read again. It is not to be so with the seventh, for it is the last. It must be pure. This last portion, pure and undefiled, is represented by the angel of Revelation 18 verse 1. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. So, if you will be studying Revelation 18 verse 1, in reality, it is even more pointing to the visitation of Jesus Christ, because the only glory, brothers and sisters, that could lighten the earth is the glory of Jesus Christ. And it says, it is at this time that Isaiah's prophecy will be fulfilled. Isaiah 52, 1 and 2. Now, thus Isaiah 52, 1 and 2 is applied when probation close to the church. Now, remember, the statement is very plain. In 1 SR, page 126, very plain, that the seventh step must be at the time when Isaiah 52 verse 1 and 2 is fulfilled. Now let us read, brothers and sisters, track number 1, page 26. Track number 1, page 26. Isaiah 52 verse 1. Awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city, for henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Isaiah 52 verse 1. This rousing alarm must sound before probation closes, for it could do no good afterwards. Indeed, could be but a mockery then. Neither could it apply to the time of the loud cry, for the church is not then asleep and without the beautiful garments. Tract number 1, page 26. I think I will no longer read another passage because that statement is sufficient enough to understand that Isaiah 52 verse 1 and 2 is during provisionary time. And the shepherds has declared clearly that the message of Isaiah 52 1 and 2 is addressed to the 144,000 living saints. Now let us read the statement here in 2 Symbolic Code 9, page 9. 2 Symbolic Code 9, page 9. Awake, it says, I would like to read the statement. Therefore, the call in the antitype, Isaiah 52:1, 2 Symbolic Code 9, page 9. Therefore, the call in the antitype, Isaiah 52 verse 1, awake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion, put on thy beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, is to the 144,000, to those whom John saw standing with the lamp on antitypical Mount Zion, that this call will find them asleep with neither strength nor the garments of Christ's righteousness. So, unto whom the message of Isaiah 52 verse 1 and 2 is directly addressed to the 144,000 living saints. And that is during the sealing of the 144,000. Brothers and sisters, now let us gradually enumerate our subject. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, the book of Daniel is revealed in the book of Revelation. Now, we already read in 2 TG 42, 32 and 33, that the cleansing of the sanctuary of the vision of Daniel in Daniel 8 verse 13 and 14 is pointing to the time when the sanctuary is cleansed. Brothers and sisters, not to the time when the cleansing is in progress. And in what way God showed to Daniel that his vision is pointing to the time when the sanctuary is cleansed? By giving the vision to Daniel that it was already a fiery stream. Daniel 7 verse 10. Whereas, when the judicial sitting, the first judicial sitting that pertains to the dead is in progress, the sea of glass is not a fiery stream. It is like unto crystal. Tract 15, pages 18 and 19. But when it becomes fiery stream, indicates that the preparation for the second judicial sitting were already being made. And that is the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel concerning the second judicial sitting, concerning the second judicial session. The preparations were being made. That the only portion that was shown by God to Daniel is the sea of glass, which clear as crystal became fiery stream. the scene changes because the first judicial sitting, the first judicial session is already finished. Then the preparations for the second judicial sitting, for the second judicial session were being made. And it was illustrated in the vision of Daniel as a fiery stream. And at that time, when the preparations were being made, according to track number 6, page 55 and 56, Jesus Christ receives the kingdom. What does it mean by Jesus Christ receives the kingdom? Acquires ownership of it. That there is already a church on earth that Jesus Christ recognized them as His. That Jesus Christ claimed them as His own. And unto that church, all the promises made by Jehovah will finally be carried out into that church. I remember the statement in Prophets and Kings. Here in Prophets and Kings, page 714, it says, "Never has the Lord been without true representatives on this earth who have made His interest their own. These witnesses for God are numbered among the spiritual Israel, and to them will be fulfilled all promises made by Jehovah to His ancient people." You see, brothers and sisters, all promises. In page 713 in Prophets and Kings, it says, "That which God purposed to do for the world through Israel, the chosen nation, He will finally accomplish through His church on earth today." He will finally accomplish through His church on earth today. In 720, Prophets and Kings, it says, "Then it is that the redeemed from among men will receive their promised inheritance. Thus God's purpose for Israel will meet with literal fulfillment." Now let's go back to our subject, brothers and sisters. It says, verse 21 and verse 22 on Daniel 7. It says, "And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them." It says, "until the Ancient of Days came." What does it mean by the word "until"? In track number 3, I remember the statement. On page 66, it says, "As the word until means up to." Track number 3, page 66. So the word until meaning up to. Now let us apply first to the primary application. Let us apply to the primary application. Let us read 2SR. 2SR, page 139. Let us read. It says, "The horn bears rule over all the earth." The horn bears rule over all the earth. That is very plain, right? And what's the subject in Daniel 7, verse 21? It is concerning the horn. The same horn. Brothers and sisters. Now, Let us read the statement. In order to fully comprehend what is being taught in this chapter, we again call attention to the chart on page 128. Now let us follow that chart along with the reading in the foregoing study. It is proven that the exceeding great horn of the goat does not represent imperial Rome only, but also papal Rome and the present world as well. What is the present world? Brothers and sisters. So we need to study closely now what is represented by the present world. In Daniel chapter 2, that is the 10 tools. Right? But how about the beast? What beast represented by the present world? Let us read first to SR 118. Then we will go back to that reading. It says, 2SR page 180. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Revelation 17 verse 10. The king that is must be the one in existence at this present time. And the one that is not yet come must be in the future. Consequently, the 5 that are fallen must be in the past. This would be the only fair position for one to take without doing injury to the holy word of God. As it has reference to the entire world's history and their sin, we must consider the number of universal empires or periods since the world began. There is one before the flood, as previously explained. The second is Babylon. The third, Medo-Persia. Fourth, Greece. And the fifth is the Roman monarchy. These 5 are fallen. The one that is the present civilization since the fall of Rome under the symbol of the leopard-like and the scarlet-colored beast to the commencement of the millennium, which period is termed Rome in her broken state. So what is the period represented by Rome in her broken state? Represented by the leopard-like and the scarlet-colored. Brothers and sisters, now let us now study closely these 2 beasts, leopard-like and scarlet-colored. They are the representation of that present world. I would like to use the term from 1844 onwards, from 1844 to the commencement of the millennium. It is represented by these 2 beasts, leopard-like and scarlet-colored. Although, we will take that subject in more detail on the subject, the beast and its image. But it is very important to connect that subject because the book of Daniel, the particular object in view is the beast and the sanctuary. And that beast is pertaining to the 4th beast and more particularly to the exceeding great horn. Now, let us read again the statement here in 2SR page 139. It says, let's read. In the foregoing study, it is proven that the exceeding great horn of the goat does not represent imperial Rome only, but also papal Rome and the present world as well. For the horn first persecuted Christ and his followers under the jurisdiction of the Roman monarchy. Then it says, the truth expressed by the daily and the sanctuary were trodden down by reason of transgression in the period of the broken state of Rome up to 508 AD. So the word up to 508 AD, brothers and sisters, so when does the broken state of Rome commence? We know that that is in 321 AD. And the 1888 message called it triumvirate, broken state, three powers. Brothers and sisters, it is called triumvirate. And the focal point is in our days. Let us distinctly separate the period of the broken state of Rome and the period when it is no longer a broken state. It is called threefold union. In 508 AD, the daily and the sanctuary was no longer trodden underfoot, but rather it was taken away. Because trodden underfoot indicates that the daily and the sanctuary were still there, but it was only trodden underfoot. And the best illustration must be found in the words of Jesus Christ itself. Let us read Matthew chapter 5. It says, verse 13, ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. Matthew 5, verse 13. So what does it mean? That the sanctuary had been trodden underfoot. I think it is best explained in the subject, the beast, that the church, which is of God, had been defeated by the devil. So that is the illustration, brothers and sisters. In 2SR page 100 and 101, let us read again. 2SR page 100 and 101, it says, if God's ideal is to bless the world through the medium of His church on earth, and they to whom the gospel for the world is committed have left the ship and are serving the devil in the presence of themselves, where is the hope of the world? So, that is the illustration, brothers and sisters. Or in other words, the church is implemented by God for the salvation of men. But if that church had been defeated by the devil, then it become the weapons for our own destruction. Now, I would like to read answerer number 1. Answerer number 1 on page 65. Answerer number 1 on page 65. It says, thus we see that the Reformation, which originally under the direction of inspired men, lifted the church out of one morass, later under the direction of uninspired men, plunged her into another, wherein she has been plundering ever since. And unless we let the truth extricate us from this fatal bug of confusion, we cannot defeat the enemy of inspiration in his tireless and powerful efforts to pervert the implements of our salvation into weapons for our destruction. Brethren, only by the prophecy. I think that is the only. I have many things to say, but I would like just to say this reading in track number 6, page 4. By the prophecies only can we prove or disprove, know what we believe and believe what we know, and with safety accept or reject any message. Track number 6, page 4. By the prophecies only can we prove, disprove, accept, or reject. That's why in 2 TG 24:15 it says that the prophecy, the vision, is the acid test of any purported Bible truth. Now, let us now focus our attention to this reading. It is one of the prophecy that we need to study closely, brothers and sisters, whether Daniel is telling the whole truth, brothers and sisters, or not. But it is only in the book of Daniel that we can read the statement, the interpretation thereof is sure. Right? That is only in the book of Daniel. God attached the word, the interpretation thereof is sure. Let us read that statement in Daniel. Daniel chapter 2. Although there are many verses in the book of Daniel. But it says here, Daniel 2 verse 45, the interpretation thereof sure. Now let us go back to SR 139. The truth expressed by the daily and the sanctuary were trodden down by reason of transgression in the period of the broken state of Rome up to 508 AD. For the imperial government came to an end in the year 476 AD. Furthermore, the papal power treats God's truth on the ground up to the termination of the prophetic 1,260 years, and ended with the imprisonment of the Pope in 1798 AD. But the sanctuary and the daily were held to the ground by the great horn up to 1844. So, the daily and the sanctuary were held to the ground by the great horn up to 1844. At that time, he lost control of them, and the power of the three angels' messages raised the truth from the ground or from underfoot and placed it in the church. Therefore, the great horn is a symbol of the entire New Testament period to the second coming of Christ, corresponding with the legs of iron and the feet and toes of the great image of Daniel 2. So what coming of Christ mentioned here? No, it cannot be the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. Otherwise, we will be saying that the exceeding great horn had been able to trodden underfoot the daily and the sanctuary, even up to the time at the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. Now, let us continue reading first, brothers and sisters, because it's easy to understand, because God already provided us the groundwork. What is the statement in tract number 5, page 34? Fulfilled prophecies are seen, therefore, employed by the scriptures to serve as the groundwork of that prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. Now, let me read to you the statement. It says here in 139. These are facts which cannot be denied. It's up to us if these facts, we will deny these facts. However, there is another proof that bears evidence of the same. Say the prophet, and after thee, king of Babylon, shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom, kingdom of brass, which shall be rule over all the earth. Daniel 2, verse 39. What kingdom predicted beforehand that shall bear rule over all the earth? According to the Bible, the kingdom of brass. Then it says, the brass kingdom is accepted to represent Grecia, but the fact is that Grecia never did be rule over all the earth. The most distant point of the compass reached by Alexander the Great was a portion of India. Neither did imperial Rome be rule over all the earth. What then? Is Daniel wrong in the interpretation of the dream? If there is any error, Daniel cannot be at fault. The responsibility would naturally fall on God, who was the overseer of all the writings and the interpretation of the scriptures. If Daniel had made a mistake, it was God's duty to have him correct it. But as God is perfect in all his work, he cannot allow error in his holy word. Daniel is correct in his interpretation, and the brass kingdom must be ruled over all the earth, for all else may fail, but God's word shall stand forever. Now, what does it mean by saying the brass kingdom shall be ruled over all the earth? No, it is not pointing to Grecia, but rather, according to tract number 2, let us read again the statement in tract number 2 on page 13. It says here, while brass being turned to gold precisely fits the third empire, Grecia, and consequently has the numerical value of 3. So, the metal brass has a numerical value of number 3. So, here in tract number 3, on page 39, it says, and as the great horn of the he-goat is symbolical of the Roman world, represented by iron in Daniel 2 verse 40, in its 3 periods, pagan, ecclesiastical, and Protestant. Also as in its 2nd period, it trod the truth and the host underfoot and polluted the sanctuary by bringing in the abominations while it practiced and prospered. Daniel 8 verse 12. Now ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. The exceeding great horn has 3 periods: pagan Rome, Papal Rome and the Protestant period. So the statement in Daniel 2 verse 39 is plainly telling you and I that the predicted event by which the horn shall bears rule over all the earth must be in the third period of the exceeding great horn, represented by the brass kingdom, being the numerical value of number 3. Now let us read 2SR page 139. It says, 140 rather. Had Daniel said of the nondescript beast, symbol of imperial and papal Rome, that it would be ruled over all the earth, the claim would prove incorrect. Now I would like to read again. It says, had Daniel said of the nondescript beast, symbol of the imperial and papal Rome, that it would be ruled over all the earth, the claim would prove incorrect. Why? Because pagan and papal Rome is represented by iron. It did not represent by brass, brothers and sisters. And it says in the upper portion, it says, the Bible is correct in making the statement concerning the kingdom of brass, that it shall be ruled over all the earth, for the brass represents the goat. But what portion of the goat? It is on the third period, because brass has a numerical value of number 3. And what is the third period of the exceeding great horn? Protestant period. Brothers and sisters, the Bible cannot be mistaken. By the prophecies only can we prove or disprove, accept or reject. Now, I would like to read 2 TG. Uh, 2 TG number 22 on page 21 and page 22. It says, this symbolical prophecy is seen to corroborate history. It points out that the Christian church at first suffered martyrdom, shown by the color red, then followed the dark ages of religion when the church was in captivity, black. Following this came the Protestant period, the period of religious freedom, white theme. What is the Protestant period? The period of religious freedom. Brothers and sisters, and that is the time predicted beforehand that the daily and the sanctuary was trodden underfoot. Brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate when the daily and the sanctuary will be taken away. We are now studying concerning the predicted event that the daily and the sanctuary was trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn. Brothers and sisters, it practiced and prospered. What had been practiced and what had been prospered? That the exceeding great horn had been able to hide in the understanding of the people concerning Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary. Now let us read track number 4. Let us read page 26. It says, note that the truth and the place, not the sanctuary itself, were cast down. Now, ponder deeply. It says, note that the truth, and not only the truth, but as well as the place, not the sanctuary itself, were cast down. It cannot be applied to the Dark Ages in reality because the sanctuary itself in that period of time was cast down. They have no knowledge concerning Christ's mediatorial work in the heavenly sanctuary. But it is in the Protestant period. And of course, brothers and sisters, this should not refer to the Sunday keepers. It must be pertaining to God's people. What does it mean that note that the truth and the place, not the sanctuary itself, were cast down? That is, both Christ's truth and His place in the earthly sanctuary were set aside so that the knowledge as to His mediatorial work became obscured. Track number 4, page 26. Brethren, the more sure word of prophecy will never tell a lie. For example, if you are living in the days of the first advent of Jesus Christ, if you will observe, and at that time, in reality, there was no other religion except the religion of the Jewish people. And according to the shepherd's rod, in 2TG, I would like to read. It says here that there is no religion which is more pious. Let's read that statement given by the shepherd's rod. 2TG 41a. The world has never seen a more religious group nor a more praying and pious people than were the priests, scribes, and Pharisees in Christ's day. Yet, they were the very ones who protested against Christ's teachings, who spread prejudices and confusion among the people, and who keep them in darkness. Yes, they deceived a whole nation. Finally, if the Jewish Sanhedrin was not to be trusted at Christ's first advent, then how do we know that the Christian Sanhedrin at Christ's second advent is to be unquestionably correct? It was the Sanhedrins of the Middle Ages and down to this day that have fought against any divinely led reformation. What does it mean by Sanhedrin? Headquarters. Brothers and sisters, Sanhedrin represent headquarters according to Symbolical. Now, let me see to find that statement saying Sanhedrin represent headquarters. The Sanhedrin in the days of Jesus Christ, that is represented by headquarters. Symbolical. Now, let us now ponder deeply this very important prophecy. The shepherd's rod itself in 2SR page 141, it says, note the accuracy of inspiration. Has the prophet said, the kingdom of iron shall be ruled over all the earth? It would have been true as far as the iron-bearing rule, but such affirmation would have discredited this wonderful lesson taught by the symbolical. What is true of the iron and clay is true of the gold, and one corresponds with the other. 13 Symbolical 5 and 6, page 27. So, Sanhedrin represent headquarters. 13 symbolic code, 5 and 6, page 27. Now, let us go back to the prophecy of the exceeding great one. Would you think the Bible is not telling the whole truth when it says, in the third period of the exceeding great horn, the horn shall bear rules over all the earth. Now, brothers and sisters, first of all, is Daniel chapter 2 literal or symbolical? Because that is Daniel 2 verse 39. Brothers and sisters, if that is symbolical, then the earth mentioned there could not be literal earth. That the exceeding great one shall be ruled over all the earth. And there is no other symbolization of the earth except the two-horned-beast domain. Now, let us read. The Great Controversy. The Great Controversy, page 573. Let's read the Great Controversy. It says, in the movements now in progress in the United States to secure for the institutions and usages of the church the support of the state, Protestants are following in the steps of papists. Nay, more they are opening the door for the papacy to regain in Protestant America the supremacy which she has lost in the old world. The Great Controversy, page 574. Now, that is very plain. The only place predicted beforehand that the papal supremacy, the lost power of the papal supremacy will again be regained. Where? In the United States of America. Now, brothers and sisters, would you think that the papacy would be set up in the United States of America unless there is a falling away first? Brethren, in the writings of Sister White, we already read to you in Bible commentary here, and let us read again. Bible commentary for BC 1162 and 1163, Ezekiel 28 verse 2, verse 6 to 10 is attached to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 7 and 8. It says, soon to be fulfilled. Soon to be fulfilled, brothers and sisters. And it says, I would like to read, a general movement represented. I ask our people to study the 28th chapter of Ezekiel. The representation here made, while it refers primarily to Lucifer, the fallen angel, has yet a broader significance. Not one being, but a general movement is described, and one that we shall witness. A faithful study of this chapter should lead those who are seeking for truth to walk in all the light that God has given to His people, lest they be deceived by the description of these last days. Now, why is it, brothers and sisters, that in the third period of the exceeding great horn, that is the only period by which predicted beforehand that the horn shall be rule over all the earth. Why it did not say in the period of pagan Rome, in the period of papal Rome? The only answer that can be given is that although the Jewish church had been defeated by the devil in the period of pagan Rome, but still God raised up a church in that place, the apostolic church. In the second period of the papacy, or the exceeding great horn, which is the papacy, the second stage of the nondescript beast, although the Ephesus had been defeated by the devil, but still God raised up in the continent of Europe. Brothers and sisters, we have Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptists, the four great denominations, and also the woman is hidden in the wilderness. But in the third period of the exceeding great horn, what is the spiritual side, brothers and sisters, by which the exceeding great horn bears rule over all the earth, the symbolical earth? The time is running out, brothers and sisters. And we are coming face to face to that great and dreadful day of the Lord, the final day of atonement. It is a complete declaration from the prophetic word of God that God did not raise up any divinely called movement in the two-horn beast domain. If God raised up a divinely called movement in the two-horn beast domain, then that prophecy will never be fulfilled. That the exceeding great horn bears rule over all the earth. If the indication that the exceeding great horn bears rule all over the earth because the Jewish church had been defeated, then God would say it, that on that metal represented by iron, God would declare it. But the Jefferson says that claim proved incorrect because there is a divine lesson why God said only in the brass kingdom, the third period of the exceeding great horn, that the horn bears rule over all the earth. Whether you believe it or not, there was not even one movement in the United States of America that they have knowledge concerning the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. Otherwise, the Bible is mistaken. Now, I would like to read the great controversy. The great controversy, page 49. It says, the Apostle Paul, in his second letter to the Thessalonians, remember, we already read in 4 BC, 11:6-2, 11:6-3, that 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, in reality, the perfect fulfillment is still in the future. And it is attached to Ezekiel 28, verse 2, and verse 6-10. What is Tyre and the Prince of Tyrus? We will focus on that in our next episode. The symbolization of Tyrus. Now, I would like to read here in the Great Controversy, page 49. It says, the Apostle Paul, in his second letter to the Thessalonians, foretold the great apostasy which would result the establishment of the papal power. Now, the papal power cannot be established not until the great apostasy. The occurrence during the Dark Ages is only the groundwork. That is not the particular object in view. Let me read to you in the Shepherd's Rod, the great apostasy. 1 SR 219. 1 SR page 219 and 220. To the prophet Isaiah, this great apostasy, fostered by blind spiritual guides, was revealed, which he describes in the following scriptures. Isaiah 59:16. And he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness it sustained him. Isaiah 59:16. And I looked, and there was none to help, and I wondered that there was none to uphold. Therefore mine own arm brought salvation unto me, and my fury it upheld me. Isaiah 63 verse 5. Micah, looking forward to this wholesale deception, says, trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide. Micah 7 verse 5. The Shepherd's Rod called it great apostasy as well as wholesale deception. But Isaiah 59:16 and Isaiah 63 verse 5, it is called the great apostasy. But Micah 7 verse 5, it is called wholesale deception. Now let us read the testimony of Sister White in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, 355. Let us read Testimonies for the Church in Volume 1. Volume 1, page 355. It says here, brothers and sisters, I was pointed to Isaiah 58, Isaiah 59, Jeremiah 14 as a description of the present state of our nation. United States, because Sister White is an American citizen. Pointing to our nation, Isaiah 59. What is Isaiah 59 verse 16? Great apostasy. What does it mean? In 1 SR 150, 1 SR page 150, it says, verse 16, first part, and he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. God was astonished. Moses and Aaron stood between the dead and the living. Moses and Aaron stood between the dead and the living. Numbers 16:48. God used Elijah on Mount Carmel. 1 Kings chapter 18. In the crisis here brought to view, God finds no man. Ezekiel 22 verse 30. So he himself interposes. What crisis mentioned there? 1 SR 219, Isaiah 63 verse 5, 2 TG 44, page 38. That is pointing to the judgment that pertains to the living. The prophecy is very plain. How could it be that there is an inspired servant in the United States of America when it was predicted beforehand that the time will come that there will be no more inspired servant in the symbolical earth? Why? The answer is found in 2 TG 22:22. It says, God's Spirit having been silenced in the North Country. What is North Country? Babylon. Babylon. Now, let us read 2 symbolic code, number 1, page 8. So let us read. 2 symbolic code, number 1, page 8. As the fulfillment of this prophecy is yet future, we cannot now tell who will then be the head, king of the north of this prophetic nation, modern Babylon, that is symbolized by the two-horned beast. Whose president mentioned here? It points out to the 45th and then 46th president of the United States of America. That United States of America, which is symbolized by the two-horned beast, it says it represents modern Babylon. And that is the North Country. Now let us read again the statement here in 2 TG 22, page 22. God's Spirit, having been silenced in the North Country, must denote that the messages of God in the North Country were generally rejected, especially the one of the fourth chariot. It did not say, especially one of the 4 chariots. No, the shepherd's rod is very plain. One of the 4th chariot. What is the 4th chariot? Track number 2, page 34. Laodicean. The phrase one of always indicates more than one. You cannot use the term one of if it is only one. One of the Americans. One of the Filipinos. One of the 24 elders. One of the 4 beasts. So Laodiceans here are 2. The typical Laodiceans, because the word Laodiceans, people declaring judgment. Answerer number 1, page 11. And there are 2 judgment. Judgment that pertains to the dead, and judgment that pertains to the living, and one of them, although I will no longer elaborate who is, which one of them, but for sure, one of them, it says, especially the one of the 4th chariot, which caused the Spirit of truth to turn away and to bring truth no more through them, to be silent there, and that, therefore, there is not to be expected any truth through them. But in reality, it is even more directly applied to the antitypical Laodicean, the Davidian. Because of their deeds, when Bitihotep died immediately, they engaged in private interpretation. Very disgusting and embarrassing. And because of that act, it causes the Spirit of truth to turn away from them. That there will be do not expect any truth in the United States of America. This is the statement here in 2 TG 22, page 22. And that is why, brothers and sisters, it is a sort of ignorance. Brothers and sisters, that you will expect messages from that place by which the God of heaven is the one who announced that do not expect any truth through them. My spirit have been silenced in the North Country. What is North Country? Babylon. But there are 2 Babylons. Let us read 2 SR 245. 2 SR page 245. It says here, thus the second angel's message of Revelation 14 verse 8 was proclaimed immediately after the disappointment, saying Babylon is fallen, is fallen. That is, the world in 1844 fell in the same manner as the one before the flood. The present world is called Babylon because the kingdom of Babylon is the immediate one after the flood. Thus, Babylon became the mother of the nations. So there are two Babylons. The Babylon in the antediluvian world and the Babylon in the post-diluvian world. What is the Babylon in the antediluvian world? It is only pointing to the church because there was no state. The state and the nations originate after the flood. So the illustration is perfect. So the second angel's message proclaimed in 1844 is addressed only to the church, to the churches, to the four great denominations, also including all the first-day Adventists. So what is the proclamation of the second angel's message? Do not expect any truth no more. God uses these churches, Lutherans, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, and also the first-day Adventists. God used this organization. God used these churches. But at the time that heaven declared, do not expect any truth, then it is a sort of ignorance and also foolishness to expect any truth to that churches when God declared, do not expect any truth. But the second Babylon is no longer church, but rather nations. It points out to the entire United States of America. All the messengers that God raised up after the Dark Ages is in the United States of America. William Miller, Sylvester Bless, Joshua Himes, Ellen G. White, Alonzo Jones, Waggoner, P.T. Hawthorne. But the time came that the heaven decreed and declared, do not expect any truth from the North Country, which is represented by modern Babylon. The Babylon after the flood. Because there are two Babylons. The Babylon before the flood, antediluvian world, that is pointing only to the churches, but the Babylon after the flood is pointing to the nations. So, here the statement I would like to read to you in 2TG number 9. It says, 2TG number 9, page 7. We know that the Spirit who leads into all truth and all knowledge is not himself led or taught by any man. Hence, why should we depend on any man that is divested of inspiration to pass judgment on inspired truth? The word points out that not men only, but even the nations are as nothing. The nations mentioned here, brothers and sisters, is pointing to the United States of America. And why should we depend any explanation on the inspired truth originated from those people which is divested by inspiration? The word divested, deprived. But it is the consequence of their deeds. Because instead of waiting for the Lord to the arrival of the Spirit of truth, they violated the divine injunction and then engaged in forbidden practice of private interpretation. Immediately after P.T. Hawthorne died, which caused embarrassment to the Deist Day organization. Brethren, we will continue this subject in our next episode, and to repeat again, we are coming face to face that predicted event when there will be great changes that will happen. So thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful day.